The way things go so off the rails here, you can say that things become far from ideal. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about a newer VOD release, An Ideal Host. Before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this movie were, if you already saw it, or if you were planning on seeing it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time and let's talk about An Ideal Host. This stars Nadia Collins as Liz, who just wants to host the perfect dinner party, but an unexpected guest sends the evening into chaos with potentially apocalyptic consequences. This Australian horror comedy is written by Tyler Jacob Jones and is directed by Robert Woods, and it hit VOD earlier in the month. This was initially not on my radar whatsoever, and I only just stumbled upon it by chance, and I saw that while only a few people were talking about it, it was all fairly positive stuff. Now, I love a good horror comedy, and I like movies that are able to take a limited cast and setting and make the absolute most out of it, which is what this was looking to do. The majority of this takes place just in this one house, with some of it venturing just outside of the general area. In some ways, it reminded me of a much less bleak version of the Keira Knightley horror comedy Silent Night from last year, as both center around a dinner party among old friends that goes horribly wrong. But unlike the absolutely depressing Silent Night, in this case, while things go out of control, you're left smiling through most of it, even though things don't necessarily end well for some. The film sets its tone perfectly when in the opening scene, Liz and her boyfriend Jackson, played by Evan Williams, are seen rehearsing their engagement, which they're going to play up as a big surprise when their guests arrive, with Liz faking a shocked reaction. Everything in their life needs to be planned out and regimented, which is the exact opposite of the chaotic nature of some of their guests, one of whom winds up tagging along uninvited, which leads to a lot of fiery exchanges right off the bat. While it may sound sitcom-like in setup, the film does a good job of taking its first few minutes with everyone arriving to establish a lot of the histories and backstories and emphasizing some clear simmering tensions and animosity among at least a few of them going in. And I appreciated how it got all its points across in a fairly quick and engaging manner, with some witty, humorous banter that doesn't feel too bogged down in exposition. And it's not too far into the party where things start derailing, and quick. Now, I was a bit mixed on this, though still leaning towards positive. While I ultimately enjoy this movie overall, the turning point winds up being a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. For one thing, I appreciate how it gets to the point pretty quickly and tries not to overstay its welcome. At just under 90 minutes with credits, the film flies by really quickly thanks to its mostly lighthearted approach, snappy dialogue, and over-the-top physical humor in some instances. And I also like that it doesn't start suddenly taking itself way too seriously once it does hit this turning point. It's still very much a movie that tries to make you laugh through its tension, but I'd only say I just liked the movie and didn't love the movie because specifically of its sudden twist. This ultimately feels like two different movies stitched together. It starts off establishing all these relationship-driven tensions for the first part, and it introduces a couple of twists and turns very early on that lead you to believe it's going in one direction that feels a bit more grounded. Especially with the title like An Ideal Host and what was established in the first few scenes, I was expecting the tensions to come to a head, but in a much different way, which they even briefly tease for about a minute. But after said brief tease, it immediately pivots again and goes into complete over-the-top genre territory, filled with chase scenes, physical altercations, and splatter humor, really playing up its horror elements, though still in a comedic way. And the direction it ultimately goes in is fun, don't get me wrong there, and I won't spoil what it is, because I certainly did not see it coming. It still moves quickly, and I had some good laughs. But the thing is, it's also not the movie it was initially setting up. And it's clear part of the film's point was trying to pull the rug out from under you and make you think you're in for one thing, but then totally catching you off guard. And there have been times films have done that and have seen plenty of success, so I get what this was going for. The problem is, the twist comes at the expense of just about all that was set up in the first act. While it's good we do get an idea of who to root for and who not to root for pretty quickly through establishing these relationships, and this first act does help us form a connection with some of these characters, part of me feels like our time was just a tad wasted establishing who was still mad at who and who ruined whose life prior to the movie, because a lot of that winds up becoming somewhat irrelevant later on. And for that, I can see this frustrating people a little bit, and even I was a bit thrown off by that too, I'll be honest. But at the same time, like I said, the new direction it goes in is still fun for what it is. There's still a nice, fast-paced feel, and there's still a lot of quirky banter as seen in the first part of the movie. It's just that it's utilized for something completely different. So it's a weird feel where this movie feels consistent in some areas, but inconsistent in others. I would have liked had they still had the characters getting into petty arguments, trying to salvage things, while trying to deal with some of these newer revelations. And I think that would have helped make this shift a little less jarring. But like I said, it's still fun, and the good outweighs the bad, don't get me wrong there. Now, the only other criticism I really had for this is the fact that it's clearly got a low budget feel to it, which in and of itself I don't mind, especially because I liked how it emphasized some fun practical effects when handling some of its more heightened material, which is something you don't always get to see in bigger budget features. The problem is there are also times it goes a bit too in and out of focus during certain sequences. Now, I don't know if it was because they couldn't do too many takes and had to go with what they had because of their budget, or if it was supposed to add to this feel of disorientation that our characters sometimes feel. Now, if it's the latter, that's fine on its own, but it also comes at moments where I don't think it was necessarily warranted, like as characters come down from a particularly tense moment or just stopping after running around so much. And it just felt distracting. It's ultimately not what makes or breaks the movie for me, as like I said, I still found it to be fun, but it was hard to ignore, to be honest. An Ideal Host was a nice surprise, even if not always the most cohesive one. The film feels like two different movies sewn together, leading us to believe it's about to head in one direction, and then doing an about-face and going down a route I was totally not expecting. Now, on one hand, that does make this feel a little jarring, as it kind of throws out a lot of what it established in the first act. But on the other, I still had fun with both directions that it went in, mainly because through both parts of the movie, it still had some great quirky banter, a fast-paced feel, and some solid enough character work that made for some good laughs. I wish it was a bit more consistent in the direction it took, as it would have made this great, but despite some issues, what we got was still good. An Ideal Host gets a 7 out of 10. So let me know, did you see An Ideal Host, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you happen to see this one? Have you seen any good horror comedies in general lately? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.